Kayla.
Sure. Hi everyone, I'm Kayla. So I think I think about this question a lot. I get asked this question a lot, and something just happened to me that pretty much sums up why I make autobio and memoir comics. I just got back from the bathroom where I had to clean up my face because I was sobbing at my table. This woman came back from her home to talk to me because her husband came and picked up my comics yesterday, and I always have my spiel, you know, I'm Kayla E's, Precious Rubbish, comics about my traumatic childhood, and usually, you know, I get like a chuckle or something, and every once in a while, fellow survivors will disclose to me, and he did, and I told him that I'm sorry for what happened to him, and I told him I'm really glad that we both survived, and he left and he told his wife, and his wife came back to tell me that her husband cried for one of the first times in 22 years, and that he's seems like he might be looking to start processing some of his trauma, and like that is why I make autobio comics. The actual process of making my comics is torture. It is so painful. It's so triggering. It doesn't feel good. Drawing is hard. All of it's hard. But I do it in the hope that a person I don't know will read my work and be mirrored. And that heals me, and I hope it heals other people. But my stuff is really dark. It's really hard to read, and it's really hard to write. But I'm hoping that it's like a net plus in the world and not adding more pain. So that, yeah.
Thanks, Kayla. I presented with you before. I should, from now on, bring tissues.
For me.
No, for everybody. But thank you. That was a wonderful answer. And Anne, can you talk about it?
Yeah. For me, I think a lot of artists would talk about sort of like a compulsion to create, and that's what I'm working with. Why autobio specifically? It's all this material that's already there. I don't have to come up with a fiction storyline, so perhaps that's like a little bit of the lazy reason why. But I think also, yeah, processing past experiences is definitely part of it, especially with my thesis gender comic. There was a lot of processing happening on the page there. Yeah, I'll say that for now.
Yeah, no, that's great.
No, go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, sure. I mean, if I was like trying to like justify the existence of my work, I think like there's a lot to be said for queer memoir. That stuff was like really helpful for me a few years ago when I was sort of coming into an understanding of myself. I think if you have an experience that is not part of like the kind of mainstream widely circulated art, seeing memoir from people who have had similar experiences to you is really important. I know that was the case for me, and like when I hear that my work has done that for others, that's super validating. But at the same time, like I was making autobio way before I understood myself to be queer, and I think I think a lot of us are kind of driven by psychological compulsion, kind of what Ed was getting at just now. Like I just feel like I need to write down everything that happens to me. Part of it is I think like having a record of your life kind of staves off that fear of your own mortality a little bit, and it's also a way to process memories, to get some distance from them, to sort of like try to impose some meaning on memories that might be kind of chaotic or confusing or upsetting. Yeah, for me it's like a very therapeutic thing, and I feel like I'd be doing it even if no one was reading it.
Just a quick follow-up,
Yeah.
Sam. Like, so
Yeah.
what were some of the books that you read or works that you read that were helpful to you as you were kind of processing these things?
Oh,
Some of the
man.
memoirs you mentioned.
I mean, honestly, yeah, totally, Lee Mars. I mean, Howard Cruz. I mean, I guess the work of Howard is like not strictly autobiographical, but Stuck Rubber Baby was like very drawn from personal experience, and like I really like related to that kind of like slow tentative journey out of the closet from like, oh, these people are really cool. Like, oh, I just really like queer people. Oh, hey, maybe okay. But yeah, those sort of like sort of furtive, ambiguous kind of memoirs like really helped me when I was in sort of an awkward stage of figuring things out. Oh, I don't know. Who else was a big influence? I mean, Alison Bechdel was a humongous influence on me. Both her memoir work and Thanks to Watch Out For Her.
It seems like it's been a common theme through a lot of panels I've seen. It's just how important, you know, representation is, and how many cartoonists themselves get inspired to do their own stuff from seeing, you know, people like them, with experiences like them.
Yeah, totally.
So that's great. Okay, so MS, go ahead. Why Autobio?
I'm a narcissist.
Yeah.
I mean, I came up with a pretty contemporary route to comics, in that I went to a private art institution, and a lot of that is finding out what sticks and what hits in a kind of critique setting with your peers. And if you have a weird life where a lot of your early 20s are like oversharing things that, you know, other people have varying reactions to, and then you do that in your work, like the way that I talk and tell stories works better when I'm not there, and then there's not that expectation of like another person having to like react in a certain way because there's another person there, and or like feel bad for you or something like that. So so that the initial mini comics I made really resonated with my peers, and then thus put me on a track to just constantly exploit my experiences for better or for worse. So I'm now good at it,
Yeah.
and it works, so I can do it more often than not.
Great. One of the other questions I've seen come up on other panels that are talking about Autobio and stuff, especially last night, is the kind of challenge of representing yourself. Like, how do you draw yourself, and what choices go into doing that? And when I was reading your stuff, seeing how much you foreground that question. So I wanted to start that question with you to see,
Sure.
like, what challenges you face, especially, and I've got some images up here. Like, it seems like the version of you changes depending on the needs of the story, but also that you have comics you've done, like in Momics, where you actually show the different ways you've drawn yourself. So could you talk about those challenges and how that you foregrounded that in your work?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, as a trans person, the way that I look has changed quite a bit since I started making comics. If you do stuff like Autobio or any form of self-portraiture, you are staring at yourself a lot, which can be kind of a fraught experience if you have any sort of body dysmorphia. But I have drawn myself a lot of different ways. I had like a very consistent way I worked out to draw myself that worked for about 10 years, and then a couple years into transitioning, I was like, I don't look anything like this anymore. So I went through sort of a weird kind of adolescence where I was trying out drawing myself in different ways. I kind of have different avatars that I cycle through depending on like the tone of the comic now. I think that you know, when you are doing Autobio, you're kind of making a lot of choices with like how cartoony to make it, how detailed to make it. If you're like kind of going for pathos, I'll get some cross hatching going, and you can kind of like get into all the, you know, gruesome details of your face up close. If I'm doing something that's like more light, or maybe something that I want more of a distance from as the narrator, I'll do something that's like very simple and cartoony, maybe just like a few lines, and then you're sort of reduced to a more two-dimensional cartoon character, which is sometimes a little less scary.
I love this. Yeah. This example is one of my favorites of yours with this, and this is in enlightened transsexual comic.
Yeah, she's sort of an avatar that started. I was thinking of this as a self-portrait when I drew it, and then she sort of took on a life of her own. But that's definitely a character that's based on what I looked like at the time that I drew it.
That this is a representation too of the kind of three different kind of what like kind of gender identities you've been working through.
Totally, yeah.
That's fascinating. And Anne, I wanted to ask you the similar question, but one of the things I noticed about Crush is that you barely appear in that comic. It focuses instead on a lot of the objects and things that are a part of the narrative, and so not just talking about like how you represent yourself, but also the choice not to represent yourself in some of those scenes.
Totally. I just started a poetry workshop this past week with a very talented writer, Brittany Rogers in Detroit. And one of the first things we started talking about was interiority and which images are shown versus not shown in a poem, but I think it applies here too. And how that's really like a lot of the art of how this story is told, right? It's not just what you include, it's what you leave out. And I think with Crush specifically, I've received a lot of feedback that some of my work can be like a little bit talking heads. And so in this exercise, I was specifically pushing myself beyond that to more set the scene and go in a slightly different direction. But as far as the challenges of drawing yourself, I'm perhaps still in that adolescence period that Sam was talking about, and maybe will be forever because my hair changes like every year. So depending on when the comic was produced, I might look really different.
I just wanted to add that one thing I just thought of, like, when I make Autobio comics, I tend to like play around with chronology a lot and kind of move events or pages around to like fit the narrative a little better at the risk of like, being chronologically accurate.